There's a fight going on right now, and it's not the kind of fight that's a pay-per-view fight because the stakes are much higher than that. This is a fight for football in Los Angeles. Now, you may be thinking Los Angeles already has two football teams. Who could be fighting, and why would they be fighting, and what are they fighting about? And then you may be asking me, is it even interesting to hear about billionaires fighting? And the answer is yes, because what's going on in Los Angeles right now has a long history, and there is no end in sight. And here's the story. As you know, the Oakland Raiders were the Los Angeles Raiders, then the Oakland Raiders. They left Los Angeles in 1994, leaving one of the biggest markets in the United States empty from having a National Football League team. The NFL really liked it that way because they always had that carrot to hold out when there were teams going for stadiums in the cities in which they were, or when it was time for expansion or even relocation. Having Los Angeles out there was the ultimate carrot. And then came a few years ago when one of the existing owners in the National Football League, a man named Jerry Jones, yes, that Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, what does he have to do with this? To begin with, everything. So now I have to go back further for you. Jerry Jones built his new ballpark called AT&T in Dallas, and it is an outstanding stadium. I called it a ballpark. It's a stadium. They give tours for $50. You can go and look at his art collection. You can see all the premium areas. You can even get to look in Jerry's suite with the private elevator. But one thing that Jerry was clear about is that building that stadium made a lot of sense because there was a huge return on his investment. And he expected that his franchise would grow in value, which it has, to become one of the most valuable franchises in the entire world, not just in football. Jerry Jones started a company called Legends Hospitality. Legends Hospitality is a company that's co-owned by Jerry Jones and the New York Yankees. It's a completely separate entity that does several things, the first of which it does concessions. The second of which is you can hire them to do your sales for you. They're like an outside sales force where if I'm the president of the Marlins, I would hire Legends. They would come in and try to sell season tickets or sell luxury boxes. They don't do it for free. They get paid both a commission and a retainer. It is a very lucrative business that is completely outside of revenue sharing in baseball and completely outside of any sort of revenue sharing in football. Completely separately owned entity. So Jerry Jones had the idea of bringing football back to Los Angeles. And what started then was a 2 to 3 year fight to figure out which would be the teams to go to Los Angeles and where a new stadium would be and who would be in charge of building the new stadium and then running the new stadium. You see, there were 3 teams in play back in the day. It was the St. Louis Rams, who, as you may know, you've seen him walking around because they've been good with Los Angeles, Stan Kroenke. Stan Kroenke owns soccer teams. He is a mogul, a multi-billionaire, and one of his most famous assets is owning the Los Angeles Rams. Then there's the family that we've talked about here on Nothing Personal and on CBS Sports HQ, and Dean Spanos. His family owns the San Diego Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers. Then there's Al Davis and his family, who own the Oakland Raiders. All of those teams were looking to move. The St. Louis Rams were looking to move out of St. Louis, the San Diego Chargers out of San Diego, and the Oakland Raiders out of Oakland. But only 2 teams could possibly move to LA, and the other was going to end up going to Vegas. They ended up putting a deal together where the Oakland Raiders are moving to Vegas, and the Chargers and the Rams are going to LA. Now that sounds easy. There's no fighting yet, you're saying. Well, the fighting has just begun at this point in the story. Once you decide which 2 teams are going to move to Los Angeles, you then have to figure out where a stadium's going to go and who's going to be responsible to build it. And this is where we get into an issue between the ownership of the Chargers and the ownership of the Rams. And this is a fight that is ongoing this moment that is deleteriously impacting both teams and their operations. What happened was Jerry Jones, on behalf of himself and in the NFL, he thought that a stadium plan put forth by Stan Kroenke, the owner of the Rams, was a better stadium plan than the one put forth by Spanos. Spanos was going to build and run a stadium in a totally different location in the Los Angeles area than where Kroenke wanted to do it. Well, both of those people and owners needed permission from the NFL and approval on where they were going to build. So then began about a 6-month process where behind the scenes, each owner was lobbying to try to get the NFL to approve their own particular stadium deal. Why would they want to be in charge of their stadium? Because that is the way to control everything about the stadium where you play, control the revenue, and increase the value of your team. So these were high-stakes gambling. Spanos went to a National Football League owners meeting fully expecting that he had a deal on the table where he would prevail over Kroenke. What he didn't realize is a deal had already been cut behind his back, where Jerry Jones was involved, Roger Goodell was involved, and obviously Stan Kroenke of the Rams. They get to the owners meeting. A deal is approved where Kroenke will be building a multi-billion-dollar stadium. The total cost of this project in LA was $1.8 billion, and Kroenke was willing to pay for it by himself. And then there were overruns. Not $100 million, not $500 million, $1 billion. And then another billion. And then another billion. And then another billion. The total cost of the Kroenke Stadium is now somewhere between $5 and $6 billion. And in return, Kroenke gets all the revenue from that building. But he needed a tenant because that was part of the deal. And the tenant is the new Los Angeles Chargers. And the total rent paid by Dean Spanos as part of this backroom deal is $1, Mortimer. $1 of rent is all that's paid. You'd think that's a great deal for the Los Angeles Chargers. You'd think Spanos would be happy, but he's not. And the reason he's not happy is he has zero say over the look of the stadium. He has zero say over who and how revenue is raised for that stadium. The only thing he had to do was sell his own tickets and his own season ticket licenses called SSLs. But the Chargers never had a chance to do it because Legends was hired to sell the boxes for this whole stadium. Yes, Legends, the same company owned by Jerry Jones and the Yankees, the Steinbrenner family. Well, wouldn't you know it, that Legends spent most of their time and energy making sales on behalf of the Los Angeles Rams, not the Los Angeles Chargers. And then, wouldn't you know it, that Spanos woke up one day and said, this is not fair. Why is it that all of the efforts are being made to get revenue to the Rams and not the Chargers? Why are we already the ugly child of this stadium deal? What happened to our honeymoon period? We play in a temporary 26,000-seat stadium in California right now, and already we get more visitor crowd than home crowd. More people cheering for the visitor team than the home team. The whole point of the relocation of the San Diego Chargers to Los Angeles was a brand new start in a market that had been empty since 1994. But what's missing from Jerry Jones and Roger Goodell and Kroenke and Spanos is they didn't realize what happened in LA between 1994 and now. All of the NFL fans in LA decided they weren't going to root for a specific team, they were going to root for any team. Which is why when visiting teams come to town and play in LA, the fans who are fans of the road team are the ones who are going to the games. Which is why when you see a Packer game in LA, it looks like it's at Lambeau. Which is why even when you see a Cowboys game in LA, it's as though the game is being played in Arlington. The real problem with that is the NFL made a huge bet on Los Angeles, as did Stan Kroenke. And they do not want this to fail because the entire carrot that used to exist of holding out Los Angeles, that carrot has now completely disappeared. So what are these teams fighting over right now, and how do they work at NFL meetings? Well, they're actually kept separately, Spanos and Kroenke, because they won't even talk. And sometimes they're photographed having a drink. That's all staged because everyone wants it to look like there's a kumbaya so people don't believe there's any problems. But in reality, the staffs of both the Chargers and the Rams are fighting about little things, about even what a golf cart is going to look like that is going to be owned by the stadium and used to bring fans and VIPs from one place to another. When you're fighting about little things like that, you know you've got a major problem. And Dean Spanos should have known better, because when you're a tenant, you never beat the landlord, ever. If you have a choice between being a landlord and a tenant, you choose landlord. And that was Stan Kroenke's position from the beginning. What fascinates me is what's happening on the field now. The Chargers walk around as though they've got a cloud over their head. They look around as though they never wanted to leave San Diego. They're not excited to be in LA. They don't feel as though it's their home team. Then you've got the Los Angeles Rams, who hired their shiny new young coach, who made it all the way to the Super Bowl and had a chance to build a dynasty, and now they're sort of having a mediocre season, and the stadium is due to open. All of the momentum that Kroenke thought he had for his franchise is being wiped away by lawsuits and lack of performance. All of the excitement of the ribbon cutting and all of the excitement of this new market that would generate millions and tens of millions of dollars of revenue is all going up in the smoke of fighting billionaires.